Welcome back, everyone, from points all around the globe. It is my particular pleasure today to say that our program will feature our distinguished Singaporean alumna, Cherie Nursalim, Liem Mei Kim, who read engineering and economics at St Hilda, matriculating in 1985. Cherie very kindly has agreed today to be our keynote speaker. Cherie, with the United in Diversity Foundation, is working in partnership with communities, businesses, governments, and academic leaders, international banks, and funding bodies to achieve a bold vision for Kura Kura, the Balinese island of happiness. Today, Cherie will discuss her pathway from Oxford to the leadership roles that she has in business and to the center of the United Nations Programme for Sustainable Development and its goals for happiness. Cherie, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to St Hilda's again, if only virtually, and to hand you the floor.
Thank you, Sir Gordon, for your generous introduction and also for the opportunity to meet many of our alumni over this Gaudy cloud gathering. I had the distinct pleasure to meet with Sir Gordon in Singapore after he assumed the role as the principal of St Hilda's. To tell you the truth, I was rather curious about our first male principal. During my time at St Hilda's, of course, it was still an all-girls college. I come from a fairly conservative family and have been brought up in all-girls schools most of my life. St Nicholas in Singapore, St Paul's in London, St Hilda's in Oxford. There's still that nostalgia for me. Some of you here may feel the same. Although I did downgrade to mixed school subsequently in my graduate work in the US. In all, I have the fondest memories of this college. Thanks to my dear economics professor, Mary Gregory, who led me to Browning. Both are angelic guardians of St Hilda's. I got to meet with Sir Gordon. To my delight, he turned out to be one of the most brilliant, humble, and endearing gentlemen. He also carried the British humor. Our first moments are cherished. Let me share a few of those snippets with you. We were headed to this Thai food eatery in Dempsey Hills. To those of you who know Singapore, I vividly recall our conversation when I proffered that Oxford could perhaps change some of the teaching methodology to introduce global labs, experiential learning with the faculty, draw cross-sector parties in addressing real-world solutions. He sat up in his deep voice with his raised eyebrow. Change. The only thing we change may be our light bulbs. Yet barely a few years hence, change we did. On my visit last year, I saw a new tower and pavilion being built, a flurry of initiatives encouraging cross-disciplinary and cross-pollination of sectors and participants, inviting business and the Climax Center for Clinical Therapeutics that already save lives in these grave COVID times. I do applaud these pioneering changes in our college, beyond just mere light bulbs. I also shared with Sir Gordon my dream for the Kura Kura Bali project, an island nestled in the heart of Bali just 15 minutes drive away from the Bali International Airport. The magical people on the island of Bali believe in the Trihita Karana values with Hindu roots. I learned from the president of Kura Kura Bali, Pak Adika. Tri, T-R-I, is 3, the number 3. Hita, H-I-T-A, is happiness. And Karana is the reasons or the ways. So what are the 3 ways to happiness for these Balinese people? First is the harmony of people with other people. Second is the harmony of people with nature. And last is the harmony of people with the spiritual. I found these values incredibly profound. I also started to see them across other ancient cultures and faiths. In Chinese, it is 天地人和. In Islam, it is Hablum min Allah, Hablum min Anas. And Anas is aligned with Alam, which is nature, Hablum min Alam. And also Pope Francis Laudato Si, I'm not sure how to pronounce. Amazingly, the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and maybe you can bring up the pyramid, fit perfectly with this happiness, 3 ways to happiness. So this is the pyramid. So I think I'm looking at the...
Sorry,
So at the base of the pyramid are the goals, the 10 goals that address people issues: poverty eradication, health, education, jobs, infrastructure, inequalities, and social issues. The middle, the body of the pyramid, addressed the blue and green biodiversity and the climate change issue at its core. At the top are peace and collaboration, or we frame it as the aspects of the spiritual. Our United in Diversity Foundation, for the past 2 decades, have partnered with MIT, as well as Tsinghua University. MIT Professor Jay Forrester, who invented the memory chip, started system dynamics and system thinking movement that followed. Our Kura Kura Bali project master plan is premised on the value, I think maybe the next slide is our project. This is the island of happiness that Gordon shared. If you have not been, you're most welcome. And we premise it upon a value creation systems chart. Next slide. And this is, I have an engineering background. So this is a systems chart. We invest in technology infrastructure as well as quality education. And we believe that will incubate 3 areas of enterprises. Incubate them to support better business, better world. So ecotourism, creating solar boats or buildings such as the 3 Mountain space behind me, or health and wellness spaces, arts, culture, creative services. So after we had our pineapple rice in Singapore, I presented this chart to Sir Gordon, and we worked him quite hard. So I think he looked at the slide and he studied it with intent, and he asked me, what do these signs mean? So we had these lagged effect. I don't know whether you can see those, looks like parallel lines, and there's positive signs. So he was the only person who have asked those questions. So these, feedback loops in the system, and so the positive relate to a reinforcing loop. So this presents a virtuous reinforcing system where the investment climate will lead to better support for the Balinese values and the ecosystem, and will lead to more global awareness. And with policy support, there will be more investment. So it's a virtuous cycle. I was inspired by our principle once again. So we as a human species used to be very cognizant of our relationship with people, with planet, and spirituality. So we just hosted this Rich 70 event that I think we also invited Oxford as a partner to host the health lab. And we had a business paradigm discussion where Hala, the CEO of B Team, and Valerie, the CEO of Imagine, shared that some 50 years ago, Milton Friedman laid the groundwork that the sole pursuit of business is just shareholders' return and nothing else. This may have seeded the undercurrents of today's social inequities and environment crisis, even influencing policy decisions that lead us down a perilous cliff. Such is the power of the pen. For the next 50 years, let us reset. And let us reset with Trihita Karana or SDG values. As chair of the UN Global Initiative Sustainable Development Solutions Network, a network of universities and scientific entities globally, we co-founded the Trihita Karana Sustainable Development Forum with the Indonesian government. There is an estimated $6 trillion of annual gap to meet the SDGs. Private sector have the assets, but a very meager amount is invested into SDGs. WAF shared that only 1% of bonds are green. BCG studies shown that women-led companies reap 23% better returns, yet a mere 2.3% are invested in them. With coalition capital and WAF, top accounting firms will now be aligning around measures for SDGs. International chambers of commerce, UNSDSN, OECD, WAF, G20 partners, and many more have come together to promote the Trihita Karana roadmap on blended finance. The next slide. These are matrix. Blended finance is the strategic use of philanthropic and development finance to crowd in additional commercial funding towards the SDGs, especially for the developing world. So this next slide, with the Harvard researcher, Andre, IEEE, that sets the standard for all the electronics companies, and the Council of Extended Intelligence, we are also introducing the Trihita Karana Compass on awareness-based technology. As not all profit is equal, not all finance is equal, and not all technology is equal. Around the last IMF World Bank annual meetings in Bali, next slide, THK Forum mobilized $10 billion of commitment, the largest blended finance event in the world. The forum will be held, the next forum, in November, and we definitely would like to partner with Oxford and St Hilda's. And we must look beyond, next slide. We need to look beyond the symptoms, which is on the surface of the iceberg, into the root causes, into the structures, into the thoughts and mental models that make up the system. The systems needs to change itself and see and sense itself. And there is this methodology that we have been working with, the U journey, that allows us to ultimately reach that source so that we could touch the heart. So open mind, open heart, and open will, to move from that ego system to the ecosystem. So for that collective awareness and shift to happen. That is an aspiration of our United in Diversity Bali campus. One of my fondest memories of St Hilda's has been the grounds, the gardens, the flowers on the Cherie river banks, the nature, but most of all the peoples, the faculty, the administration, as well as my friends and students around from all over the world that makes its diversity resplendent in its myriad of colors and petals and leaves of spring to autumn, as in Sarah Watkinson's laboratory. We feel that we are all weaved into one picturesque palette. I was told that Gaudy has this Latin root gaudium, meaning merry-making. It is a term that is used to reflect the student life in a number of the United Kingdom universities, for ancient universities. It's generally believed to relate to the traditional student song, De Brevitate Vitae. Sorry, I'm not familiar with the Latin. So on the shortness of life. Commonly known as Gaudiamus, to be merry or happy. So I will close my reunion speech by introducing the Gaudy sign of happiness. So this is the sign of happiness. So thank you very much. Oh, I think I have to go to the next slide, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to share this. This has been the United Nations General Assembly Week, and we have held many, many activities, including the Reach 70 that you were part of. One of the sessions that I was at was an international conference on sustainable development, which was the largest sustainable event around the UNGA. And I was sharing about all these, and this halo literally appeared, in Singapore in front of us. So this is something that I felt was a sign. So I just wanted to show this, since we're all in the clouds together right now. So maybe we hold this page and then, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us, and for sharing your ambitious vision for our world. I'll just quickly introduce myself to the audience out there. My name is Saad Jbabdi. I'll be your MC today during the Q&A session following your talk. I am an associate professor at Oxford University, and I'm also a lecturer at St Hilda's in engineering science, which is the reason I'm here, because you studied engineering at St Hilda's. And so let's start the Q&A. If you allow me, I'll ask the first question. And I'll start with the personal questions, if you don't mind. I'm quite curious about your background. So would you mind sharing a little bit of that with us and telling us perhaps about your childhood, where it all began?
Sure. I was born in Singapore. I was the middle child. I have an elder sister and 3 younger brothers. I grew up in a very loving family. And I think my mother and grandmother, they all worked, and they also took care of the family, especially for my grandmother, even actually both, even the extended family. And they also cared a lot about the community. I think my grandfather on my mother's side was kind of an inventor, but his health was not good. So my grandmother helped him manage, she even managed like creating microcredit, I remember sitting. I think that they call it this was in on my mother's side was in Jakarta, and they made this beca. So it's kind of like a rickshaw, but with the bicycle at the back. And so she managed that, and she invited the unemployed in the area to ride the beca and then they kind of leased them, and eventually they would own them. And she really took care of the people in the area. And so I think that, growing up with sort of women taking, leadership roles or taking on these type of social challenges as well as business challenges, sort of, I think kind of could have, these strong female role models could have influenced me. I think certainly, I know we are not a girls' school anymore, but I think that has also had some impact on me. I think especially when in Singapore, I was in St. Nicholas. It was a Christian school. We had nuns, and we sing hymns and taught us to take care of those with special needs. In fact, they stayed in our schools, and so we were sometimes cooking for them. So I think that kind of environment, growing up with diverse segments of societies, also helped. Yeah.
Very nice. So I forgot to say to the audience on the live stream that they can ask all the questions on the chat, and if they would like to, they could also include their names and where they're from, so I can ask the questions on their behalf. But let's go back to your childhood story. So I'll take you a little bit forward in time. So when did you leave Singapore to I presume come to the UK, or how did that transition happen?
Yeah, I think it was quite early on. I was just finishing in Singapore. It's like a primary school education. Then I started, halfway from my secondary one. Then I moved to the UK. I think I was in London, and I think we had a few transitions that didn't work out. So I went to, I don't want to mention the names, but I went to a boarding school, and then we moved out not too long after that, and then moved to another school in London, which turned out to have, I think later on it was actually closed by the government because of certain behavior. So it was, because we didn't understand. And then we were very lucky that I applied to St. Paul's, and I got into St. Paul's. And I think that was one of the very special schools that I really enjoyed. They really encouraged us to be independent, and we didn't have to wear school uniforms, and we could, I could do science and the arts, and so I enjoyed that a lot. And from there, they introduced me to the universities, and I was very attracted to Oxford, and visiting the colleges. St Hilda's was very. I think was the one that I really kind of fell in love with, and so I was very lucky to be accepted. And
understandable. I'm curious about your time in Oxford. Could you tell us? So you studied engineering. You already mentioned that earlier at St Hilda's. Could you tell us what you think you've learned in Oxford in general, or in St Hilda's in particular? What is it that you've learned that helped you in your career afterwards? What do you remember from here?
I think in engineering, I was one of the handful of women, I was a young lady then, but we were one of the few. And so I think that also having transitioned from an all girls environment to suddenly that kind of, so you're in an engineer, you're in that school. So now it's very different. And I'm very pleased to see that many women are doing so well. And I think in some schools it's equal numbers, or even in some aspect you could exceed. So I really feel that we have progressed, and at that time, actually I think what I learned most are not so much, because I think I did not become an engineer specifically. So what I would carry forth are some of the life lessons, perhaps. So one is that I realized that you cannot just believe any graphs or numbers or facts. I realized that from that we have to look deeper, because I was doing engineering experiments, and then I realized that often the way that you present it, the way that you look at your criteria, you can actually, or the way you set up your scale, or the way that especially today with algorithms, you can really get fooled. So we have to have critical thinking, and do not allow sort of presentations to mislead. So it is very important to look at the independence of the sort of the source, or the questions around that. What is presented, what is the data sets behind the variables that they choose, what are the reference points, or the baseline. So these are areas that require us to be more critical and look for or do your own fact checks, even if necessary. And I was not, I have to admit that I was not good at experiments. I actually suck at experiments. My engineering partner, his name is William, and he would tell me, Cherie, because whatever device I touch, it sort of falls apart or it breaks down. So he would tell me, Cherie, don't touch anything. Let's have this division of labor, which I love, because I love the maths and I love the theories. And so I said, so I do the report, and he did the experiments mostly. And so that's the first thing I learned, is just you have to be more critical, and especially in today's time with fake news and all that, it's even more important to look deeper at what is being presented.
I think I could not agree more. I think the most important thing in Oxford undergrads is to think. Critical thinking is critical.
Yes.
Just
one more. I think that the other thing is that science and experiments matter. That I learned three things, but just maybe very quickly, the experiments, it made me realize how important it is to study the past. So it does not matter whether you are in science or you are in doing, you are experiencing the COVID now, and how do you deal with it? You have to look at past experiments, how other people dealt with it, get all the data, so that you can help predict and better decide for the future. And actually, I want to say here that Adam Smith was one of the Scot, and also from Oxford, who did the Wealth of Nations, right? And that kind of laid the groundwork for economics. So we can learn from the best and the worst, And I would like to recommend, Sir Gordon, maybe you should consider the health of nations, right? So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We can really learn from a lot of these examples and learn from different countries and different examples. But of course, Oxford is already pioneering, but there are others who are doing that. But somebody needs to, create something really substantial. So if you do this book, I have no doubt it will be a runaway bestseller. And I would be happy to publish it for you, sir. I expect a cut. But this will go into faculty and students exchange for the happiness lab that Oxford will have in Kura-Kura, Bali.
So Gordon will come back in the end for some closing comments, so maybe he'll respond to the specific points. We actually have some questions from the audience out there, and perhaps I'll start with this one from Joanne Dawson, who's asking again about your time in Oxford, but about what you enjoyed here besides your studies.
I actually, at that time, I joined this industrial club. I don't know whether it's still there. I found it very helpful because we go on these trips, and we, for example, visited Next. At that time, I mean, it was like the kind of fashion, and we would visit the companies, and then they will explain their philosophies. Or there was Marks and Spencer, or we would visit how they make the chocolates, and so that we see other businesses and other. We are fortunate, some of them, they're alumni, so some of the business leaders or the entrepreneurs themselves would actually share with us their personal journey and experiences. And I think that was, for someone who has not been exposed to so much to that part of the business, other businesses, it was quite, it was quite a strong, I think, foundation for me to sort of
Please
see
tell
how.
me you visited the mini factory.
Yes. Also, I think the other part that I love is, of course, the friendships. The people around, and I think going out together. I met my best friend. She's her name is Cherie. At Oxford, and we continue to keep in touch. And actually, it was we had like regular day, sort of time where we would cook together or eat together, and there are also gatherings amongst different. I joined sort of different groups of friends, and I think those have continued to be sort of a lifelong. Including Wai Lan from Singapore. I think she's now in the education field in Singapore. And so there are many lifelong friends from Oxford. So I think that probably is the most special also. And also my professors at St Hilda's, I think with Mary Gregory is, I think we, continue to keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah. Time at university is the best time for lifelong friendships. I totally agree. So we've got some more questions from the audience. There's lots of questions on Kura-Kura and the work you're currently doing and you've talked about in your presentation. And so one question is about working in a kind of multicultural environment. How did you manage to get locals in the island to cooperate and to kind of follow your vision?
That's a very good question.
I have to say it's a question from Mingli Alsop Lim.
Great, yeah. So I think that's a very good question. I think we believe that first, I think the plan for our island, or the sort of ethos, is founded on the Balinese Trihita Karana principle. So all our master planners, all our architects, everyone who works understands that these are the Balinese values, and we try to learn and try to protect, that conserve their culture. So, for example, we also support a lot of the local the dance schools. There's in Bali, I think they're very special people that I think the reason why we felt this is the right place for our UID, our United in Diversity campus, is because the world can learn from the Balinese. So they are very strong in the communal sense. They are very artistic, they are very poetic, they are very musical, and they are very happy also because they support one another, the neighbors, they come together for a lot of festivities and so I think, for example, for this project, I didn't bring I showed the slide the other time. We did like a prayer ceremony with all the villages. This was actually their suggestion, and we followed them. And there was a lot of learning for us. They actually went, instead of announcing in the newspaper, oh, you have this project that is starting, what they did is they actually had people who create all these beautiful offerings, and then they went to all the temples all over Bali to get blessings. This is your way of introducing your project to the rest of Bali. So it's not just the village next to you. It's not just the people living on there. There's this, we have on an island, there are also 3,800 villages, but they actually went out to the rest of Bali. And we learned so much from them. And I think in terms of, we also planted a lot of trees and 500,000 trees, and we had the largest nursery, and we work with the local communities on that, as well as the culture. So like the dancing schools for the girls and the boys. And I think we also believe in growing together. So the last we want is that, because the real estate value would go up, and other people would buy over their land, and all the villagers would move out. And that is the last thing we would like. And so we would like to create this campus where we would also provide scholarship for the local community. And we hope to grow with them together. And this campus is very focused on entrepreneurial innovation that supports, whether it's eco or, the three areas, the eco side, or arts, cultural, social, or the spiritual aspect, which is very, very strong in Bali. So I think the wellness, and we also believe in, I think our foundation has supported indigenous communities. We take them through these journeys. So all across Indonesia, we have worked with from Papua, Kalimantan, Aceh, and we have seen how they have transformed after they join our programs. And even many of them who never travel out of their hometown, and they came to Jakarta or Bali for the first time, and they met others who reinforced their networks. They were able to actually achieve in scale what they could not achieve earlier. So I think these stories, as also we work with youth, I really feel that the future lies in the youth, and also in supporting the indigenous communities. So we need to balance, I think a lot, that the world needs a lot of rebalancing, and these are two of that is really critical. And I get inspired by my daughter, for example, who, she is very strong on the, I think many of the youth on the climate. They're very concerned that we are not protecting the planet. And so she takes things into her own hands. She's a vegetarian. She's even in Singapore when it gets hot, she doesn't turn on the aircon because she believes, really in conserving the energy. So they lead by example. And so I think if we can empower them, we can solve a lot of our problems.
Yeah, having been to Singapore myself, I think that's quite brave, not turning on the aircon. I'm curious, and so is someone else in the chat, about Kura, where the idea came from and what inspired it. So, for instance, Bronwyn, who's here with us, asks if maybe was inspired by your visit to the bay, to the gardens by the bay in Singapore.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think it's the way it started was just because I love Bali, and we have this project that the original plan was to build golf courses and a lot of hotels. And I was thinking that, if we do that, we do not do justice to Bali, because there's so much, and actually Bali is also under threat, the culture and others, because if their land taken over and ultimately a lot of their ceremonies, their cultures is linked to especially the agricultural land. So I think the land is also not equal. If you buy a land that belongs to a sort of a temple or artistic, the ceremonial or agricultural, because a lot of the ceremonies are around agriculture. So if you take those land away, you take a piece of Bali away. So actually, I think the planning of Bali and also how you manage the whole circular economy, the waste, there's a lot of crisis also in that sense. And I think that a lot of that could be solved with better system, better science, better mobilization, coordination. So I think this is also a lab for us, the world, to kind of protect this very special people and culture. And I think, I don't know whether there was a Bali bombing, back in 2003, and I think or two. I think that and that after that bombing, instead of blaming, people from outside, not from their faith, instead of that, they actually they did a big prayers, cross multi-faith, multi-sectors, and then they said that, we are not good enough ourselves. Let us be better people, then these things will not happen. Where in the world you find people like that? I have not seen. I mean, we can say we have these values too. We also have 天地人和 in Chinese culture, or maybe in other cultures, but to practice it to that extent, to not just forgive, but to actually look inwards and say, reflect upon ourselves. If we can all do that, from that ego to eco, like the Balinese, I think we will be in a better place.
Yeah, I'm reading another question, which is a different topic but related, from Avril Aslet Bentley, who first says, thank you very much for sharing your experiences and insights, but also asks about food sustainability. So from a health perspective, what is your view on approaches for addressing sustainability when it comes to food?
For food, I think there is, this is a very big problem, because this is, the world today, that the crisis that we face is all interrelated. and we live in a dynamic system. And I think, you know, we are one of the sort of, we also represent Starbucks, and I think, you know, like the making of coffee. And so there is, it's really important that, and all the producers or the farmers who are involved with the food, and also the consumers, to the consumers, we should have a traceability system. You know, I think I joined this Imagine group. Paul Polman started this Imagine after he left Unilever. And the idea of Imagine is to actually sort of a collective of the courageous. So sometimes it's very hard if just one business or, you know, one entity shift. You need enough to shift together to enable the system to change. So if you all these buyers, the biggest buyers, and I think he facilitated a discussion on food and land use where, you know, you have the Walmart, you have the IKEA, you have the Unilever, the P&G, you have the, you know, all the large companies, as well as working, we also work with local farmers, because I think there's also ways that are more generative, that are more, I think these are approaches that we're trying to connect. So in our next Rita Karana Forum, we are really looking for, we're trying to facilitate an outcome where the government is proposing a very large area to do food and to do farming. And we try to bridge it with, I think India has launched a very successful net zero farming technique that is, you know, very natural, very regenerative. So we are trying to bridge those type of solutions so that, you know, we could protect the food security, which is really, you know, it's really important at this COVID times. In fact, I think Bali is, you know, a place that is for tourism, so it suffers, you know, from the COVID. And so our friend like Nyoman, he's a farmer, he created, just, you know, put together those who would like to just produce and farm and just make it freely available, or bartering system that was created to enable, you know, the local community to be able to sort of go through this period. So that there is, I think, the biggest systems change that is necessary to protect both the climate as well as for food security, and also for the healthy soil. You know, like the one in India, they measure the number of earthworms, and so there are all these different metrics also that we need to learn from. And I think, you know, we don't want to recreate, we want to learn from the best and also from the worst. So we, you know, let's all come together and make a difference.
I would like to ask you another general but important question. It's not from me, it's from a person on the live stream called Jean Chia. And again, they thank you for a very inspiring speech, and they want to know what your advice is for women leaders in affecting change in business and society.
Well, I think we are different from men other than the physical. I believe that. I think I learned that actually from Peggy Delaney, who first said that, and at least I heard from her. And I think our world is, you know, needs to have more balance, to have more women, you know, taking up roles that, because I think there is certain characteristic. If you see like the social field, or I think maybe there, you know, there's this lady, Swani Han, who started the women initiatives in Harvard, and she inspires me. She always helps women from the most difficult areas in the Middle East, in war-torn areas, and I feel that we can get in if we can support one another. I think we need the he for she's. We need the man who also allow women to sort of encourage women to take the platform. I think we will have a more harmonious world. I do feel that women do have that sort of a bigger capacity to listen to more views, and maybe it's evolutionary. I think maybe you have to take care of the family, of the children, and whereas the men were hunting, in the early days. So that might have passed on, and I think in this world where we definitely need more multi-stakeholder type of mindsets, I think women, and that has been proven in the numbers also, right? The businesses that have women, that have more women boards, they have all performed better and have sustained longer. So I think, we need to, and there are societies where it's actually going backwards, or certain cultures, or, so we really need to do something together. And I think this is one of the areas that we are, for example, in the forum, we are focusing on, today I just had a call with She Loves Tech is one of the platform that I'm on the board of. This is the largest technology women competition, and we also sort of we facilitated the $1 billion fund in our last Trihita Karana forum. And I think there's amazing ladies, I invited them to come together. One is Anushi Ansari, who is now the CEO of X Prize, who is also our partner, and the other one is Shali Podges. And then, they came together, and I said, can you do something to support women? We need something at in our forum. And they came up, they said that if we do something and then we raise 10 billion to do that, 10 million to do that, is that okay? And then I said, fantastic, let's do that. And before I know it, they were able to mobilize $1 billion. So this is an exciting story of what is possible if we really have a big dream and you get the right people together and the women together. And so I think we also learned, there were some that we invited and encouraged them, but didn't work out. So we learned from those mistakes also. So I think, we need the right combination of team. And I think, in each endeavor, there is always a learning process. And I think, I feel each one has different aspects to offer, and we have to have confidence. We are not alone. And if we believe that, there is that, that if the universe is aligned behind you, then things will happen. Yeah.
Brilliant. We approaching the end of this Q&A, but I would like to kind of bring it back to you and to your personal story. So it's a question from me, and I'm just wondering how so you're a businesswoman, you run in many businesses, you run in many charities, you talk to NGOs, etc. You have a very busy life. I'm just wondering how you balance all these things and together with your personal life.
That's the $1 million question. I think that is one that I always feel that I have not, I should do more, especially, actually the COVID times gave me the opportunity to stay home and be with the kids and the family much more than I would otherwise be able to. And that to me is very precious. I feel that, I actually would like to do more of the cloud meetings. In fact, I encourage, other meetings to, if, you can save a lot of carbon footprint as well as cost and be more inclusive. So this is one of the areas where technology, is actually helping raise awareness and awareness base for human. And I think for me, I feel that, as a mother, we never feel we have done enough. I think there's a long way still for me, and so I think in the work-wise, maybe there are always room to grow, but I think the stronger feeling of, I need to do more would be on the family front. Yeah. I think I need to consult the others.
Well, Cherie, thank you ever so much for sharing your life story and your vision with us. Thanks to everybody who posted questions on the chat and followed this live. I will now hand over to Sir Gordon for the closing statements.
Thank you, Saad.
Thank you, Saad. And Cherie, I am very rarely lost for words, but I cannot think of a good enough word to describe your lecture. Exceptional, outstanding, memorable, inspirational, warm, joyful, thoughtful, critical. There isn't one word that encapsulates all of these things, but you demonstrated them in such abundance. I think it was Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, who said that a small number of like-minded people can change the world. But I don't think she had met you, because I think probably one Cherie Nursalim is changing the world. Now, I just want to take a second and do some thanks to all of the people in the background who made this happen. And I'm going to start with Triona. Thank you, Triona. Demelza, who is also, I think she's on the call, but we can't see her. Harris, our technical guru, without whom nothing would happen. Probably the sun wouldn't even come up in the morning. And of course, Saad, it was very good of you to lead in such a wonderfully expert way the questioning and the eliciting the wonderful answers from Cherie. And of course, Bronwyn, who sits at the head of this particular pyramid, the development pyramid for St Hilda's, and all do a fabulous job. But my main thanks are reserved for you, Cherie. I'm absolutely convinced that the power of what you say, I know that the pen is strong too, but sometimes people just emanate a certain magic that makes everybody sit up and listen. And what I hope is that we might take advantage, it sounds like a strange thing to say, but the current dreadful pandemic, we may be able to turn some good from it by not going back to the world as it was before, but taking the best things that we have learned and making sure that we apply them in our daily lives and across our nations and our societies. So I'm hopeful for that. Now, you also mentioned Adam Smith, and that struck a particular note with me, because one of my grandmothers lived in the Canongate in Edinburgh, and out of her back window, I could see Adam Smith's grave. And when I was interested, I went out and looked at it and read it. And you can imagine, I was pretty surprised. Very nearby was the grave of David Hume, So I began to look around, and this particular place is just full of the remains of great thinkers from the Scottish Enlightenment. So that got my you know, my blood up. And then when you mentioned this very clever thing, the health of nations, I thought, oh, this is it. You know,
Yes.
Cherie, you are my tutor from now on. I'm only here for tutorials with you. But I'm not too sure about sharing the royalties. We can discuss that. But finally, everyone who has joined us, I hope that you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. I mean, I really feel uplifted on lots of different levels. I truly am so grateful to Cherie for giving us this keynote. The trouble is, it's going to be a very hard act to follow. So please never invite me to give a keynote lecture at the Gaudy at Bronwyn. I will say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the weekend, the remains of the weekend. Again, thank you for your help, for your support of your college, St Hilda's. I think we are a special place. We will remain a special place. And I think we will develop in the right direction for decades, centuries to come. That's my hope. Finally, a final goodbye to everyone. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Happy.
Happy.